Welcome to the Public Works Advisory Board Wednesday, April 19th, 2017 meeting. All of the members of the Public Works Advisory Board are here, and so I'll call it to order. I would like to announce that I will be leaving at 10 till 7. I have a prior commitment that I had committed to prior to being put on the board and being the chair. At that time, if the meeting is still going on at 10 till 7, then Steve, the vice chair, will take over. Are there any other announcements to be made? Oh, yes, I'd like to welcome our new member, Christian Erlandson. How's that? You got it. Okay, thank you. Any other announcements? Okay. There are no presentations this evening. This is now public comment period. Members of the public that would like to talk on items that are not on the agenda can come up now, and you have 3 minutes to tell us what you are interested in. We will be taking public comment after each of the business items tonight, or during the business items, so that you can comment on them at that time. Seeing no one approaching the podium, we'll continue on to the consent agenda. It's the approval of the minutes of the March 15th, 2017 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look over the minutes, and are there any questions or corrections that need to be made? Entertain a motion? No.
Do you have something? No. I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda minutes as stated.
Is there a second? Second. Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Business items. B1, Director's Report. Give that to the director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome aboard, Christian. Look forward to working with you. Before we get into the meat of the director's report, just want to do a little update on the work program. The chairman and I met with the city council last week and went over the work program. There were a couple clarifications that they asked to be made. We're going to combine a couple of the items with other boards to have common workshops. For example, the code enforcement input on the 26-acre Atascadero Road site will be combined with other bodies and have joint meetings on those. Some of the comments from council would be to also add work with other volunteer groups, assisting them in their efforts, to add an item on bird waste cleanup, and to add some action steps to the work plan items. We'll make the appropriate modifications and bring that back through City Council. I believe they're hearing that at the end of May for adoption of the work plans, and we'll all get to see that ahead of that. So it'll probably be as an informational item on your May agenda also. A couple of the big items. We finally got enough of a break in the weather to, looks like we're going to be able to complete the pavement preservation, the ceiling project that we have going on right now. So I think the last of the ceiling will happen tomorrow, and then the stripers in town to do the striping on those streets that had striping. And we're actually adding a bunch of striping at San Jacinto in Maine, some between Main and Birch on both sides of the street, some green bike lane striping to draw attention to that area. That seems like a big conflict area, especially going to and from school. So, and then also up on Main near Quintana, as that bike lane transitions over from next to the curb to outboard of the right turn pocket, we're going to be doing some highlighting in green there to show that that bike lane makes that transition over to the out into the road a little bit further and hopefully reduce some conflicts there. I also attached a memo regarding the no right turn on red sign that was installed at Quintana in Maine. That sign had to come down due to it not meeting acceptable warrants or justification for its installation. The desire was for it to create gaps for turning movements at Radcliffe. Really wasn't accomplishing that. And that's not one of the criteria for installation of a no right turn on red. It has to do more with the signal location itself and issues with that signal. So that sign came down after only being up for a week or so. And council does have a resolution against installing unwarranted traffic control devices. We are not allowed to do that.
Rob, in your memo under the subject line, it talks about or a no left turn on red. There was never that out there.
No, that was just copied. That's the section of the MUTCD
gotcha.
Includes no right turn, no left turn.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the code section. Sorry.
No problem.
Those are the items that wanted to highlight, with the exception of just we'll be celebrating Morro Bay Transit's 40th anniversary. So coming up here, I think there's some gifts for riders during Transit Week, so of May 1st to May 6th. So you can look forward to those. And again, congratulations to our contractor and our staff for bringing us 40 years of transit service. With that, any questions? And we have some of our staff here to Joe Miller, Utilities, Janine Burlingame, Transit, Garbage, not only that, but Solid Waste, sorry, and Damaris Hansen, our Environmental Programs Manager, here to answer questions that you might have too.
Okay, are there any questions from the board?
Can I go ahead?
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, okay. First of all, I'm doing this more as a citizen of Morro Bay, and it's regarding the streets. And I want to thank staff for, I live on Piney Way. It turned out very nice. I thought the contractor you got did a good job. I'm hoping everyone in town is enjoying the new roads if they indeed got one here recently. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of kudos because I thought it was a job well done. Seems to be getting finished out right now, like you said earlier. That's
Okay. Any other, Jan?
On the transit for Janine, I guess, or whoever can answer this, on the transit short range transit plan, it says that the city's short range transit plan for the deviated fixed route, there was an RFP for that. What does that mean? Are they right now you're talking about the Morro Bay bus and this?
Correct. The short range transit plan is a 5-year development plan for our transit services. So that will include Morro Bay Transit, which is the deviated fixed route that has the call ride service that flexes off the fixed route, as well as our trolley service.
So at this point, it's just a study to see if they're still viable, or is it?
Well, what the plan does is it looks at your current operating statistics from the past 5 years. It looks at your prior short-range transit plan or your triennial performance audit, any recommendations that you may have had in those. Have they been enacted, and are they they take a look and see, are they working to do what they were designed to do? They look at your budget over the prior years and see, are we, based on our operating data, are we being efficient and effective? And then they will make recommendations for improvements over the next 5 years, should some of them require funding, if there's funding available, to enact that would help to make the services more efficient and effective, increase riders, lower operating costs, things of that nature. And then there's also a fiscal component where they will kind of project out and estimate what your expenditures and your revenues are going to be, as well as a capital component. So purchasing new vehicles, we have a replacement cycle, what is that? And then plotting those out to see, are we going to have funding shortfalls, where those might be, and then looking at some potential alternatives to make some changes that might account for that or ameliorate that.
Okay, I understand. When I first read it, I was wondering if you were cutting out some of the services that the bus offers right now.
That is potentially can always be a service alternative that gets looked at and evaluated, and that would just be dependent on the prior operating data. So Saturday service, for example, is something that has been added over the last few years. Is that operating efficiently and effective? Is it helping the fare box ratio? Is it doing what it was designed to do, which was to increase ridership on that day, or is it merely shifting the day and the week when people are riding? And then when you're looking at your budget, if we are seeing funding shortfalls, that's where an alternative like service hours or service days that would then get more evaluated and looked at as a potential to enact.
So this request for proposals is just something that happens on a regular basis?
Correct. We should be doing our short-range transit plans, updating those about every 5 years. We've been having some funding issues with getting funding available to do the plan. So our current plan is actually almost 10 years old. So we're a little out of date, in addition to the fact that we changed from a demand response door-to-door service from that old plan to the deviated fixed route that we're in now. So it's really kind of out of date at this point. So we had proposals that were due on Monday. We did not receive any proposals from any consultants. So what we're going to be doing is reaching out to some of the consultants who had submitted questions and shown an interest in performing the plan, and talking with them about, was it your workload that precluded you from submitting a proposal, or was the budget not enough? Scope of work, was there too many work tasks, that kind of thing, and see where we can make some adjustments with our scope of work, maybe tighten it up, shorten it up, while still being able to enact all the components that we would need in a short-range transit plan, maybe find some additional funding to increase the budget, and either put it back out to bid or do an addendum or some other process.
Okay.
So we're still having to do it, so we'll still be moving along, but the current proposal didn't yield anything at this point.
Okay. Thank you. And then I have another one for Rob on the water operations. Years ago, it seems like yesterday, but it must have been years ago, we were talking about the automated water meters, but now, and so that didn't happen, and we're going on at life as usual, replacing water meters. And one of the issues was that the water meters that were there were not reading correctly. That wasn't there sort of a gap? So are these new ones that are being put in, as they're being replaced, is that less of an issue?
So water meters are a mechanical device that wear as water goes through them, so they lose accuracy over time. So they need to be replaced periodically. So as they age, we lose water through them. Basically, unfortunately, they never lose to the city's favor. They always, more water goes past a water meter than is actually registering. So we have a periodic replacement program. And Damaris and Joe just spent the better part of today in a water loss class, going through the details of water loss and meters that the state is now requiring in new calculations for our water loss.
Okay. But still, okay. I just want, so the meters that we're still using are basically performing the same as they were, as far as you know. I mean, they're same
Yes.
kind of meters, same kind of problem.
Yes, so we're focusing on the mechanical removing the mechanical meters and putting in mag meters, which have less mechanical parts to wear out. So as we replace meters, we're replacing with a more modern meter.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from this side? Okay, John?
Just a few short ones. What was it, the rock restroom for the sewer before the grinder pump?
Microphone.
So the rock restroom had a long gravity lateral that basically a 6-inch lateral that gravity fed from the rock out to the intersection of Embarcadero at Coleman. We would have to go in there several times a year and flush that line because it's very flat there. So we pushed a bit of a force main through there and added a grinder pump to move those solids along.
So you added a sump too?
Yes.
Next question is, I've noticed that schedules on things kind of been slipping. Is that because of other priorities interfering, like the sidewalk repair and installation and the nutmeg tank replacement and the churro stream gauge? Is that because of just staffing?
It's a combination of things, staffing and, excuse me, silence that thing. Also, there's, for example, the sidewalks were reliant on the county preparing a document to get us the funds. So we've been waiting on that CDBG document to be approved, and they run the environmental on that, the NEPA on that. So we needed NEPA clearance for that to be done. This Chorro stream gauge is tied up in consultation with Natural Marine Fisheries Service. We probably will need to go out with a new consultant. Water Systems Engineering doesn't feel that they're the best value for this project, and they declined to propose on follow-on work for the Chorro stream gauge. So we'll likely, we've been talking with Corollo, who we interviewed for the One Water Plan. They provide that sort of support facilities, and we will probably have them add that to the scope of their One Water contract, provide some assistance to us for that project. Nutmeg tank, it's just a resource issue, just getting back to it and putting out an RFP to finish up the design and environmental on it.
Okay, so, and then you'd mentioned something about one of the reasons we're doing the Churro stream gauge is to retain our water rights to pumping at Churro Creek, is that right?
Yeah, it's a permit requirement from State Water Resources Control Board to gauge Churro Creek at a couple locations. At Caney Road is one of our locations, and just downstream of Churro Creek Road, we'll be installing those gauges because we have a limitation to when we can pump the water from the aquifer there. The stream has to be flowing above 1.4 CFS, and we have a temporary gauge installed right now that is monitored by a local hydrogeologist, but the permit requirements is for an automated gauge at those locations.
Okay. You also mentioned that if we do take advantage of that resources, then we'd have to also build a reservoir to store the water?
That would optimize the use of that water, because generally when the stream is flowing above 1.4 CFS is when our water demand is generally lower. It would work optimally if we had a spot to store that water. We'll also probably need to build in some sort of water treatment there, because that groundwater is also high in nitrate. It is our highest water right, and but before we get too far down the road with building things and spending millions of dollars on developing that water, we need to see how that plays into our overall water portfolio, and that's one of the tasks of the One Water planning effort, is to look at that water supply portfolio and see where our best value is.
Does that also feed into the water recycling facility?
It'll have a tangential effect to that. The proposal is to inject groundwater in the Morrow. We'll hear more about this in a few minutes, but the alternatives analysis showed the recommended alternative is groundwater injection in the Morrow Valley to increase the reliability and water supply that we could withdraw from that aquifer.
Okay, and then water conservation, you had, were we doing what's a water supply stress test, just out of curiosity? The board is not going to require us to do it anymore, but was it basically estimating how things can go bad?
Yes.
From drought?
From drought, because as the governor just stated, the drought is over now, so we can relax. I don't think so, but we'll still. This community has been a conserving community even before the drought was declared. I think it will maintain our conservation efforts. We just don't have some of the draconian penalties that we had when there was the requirements from the for mandatory drought water conservation efforts.
Okay, then under wastewater, how many new laterals did we install last month?
How many laterals did we install last month?
Or inspected newly installed lateral connections? Just, I was curious how many there were.
I don't know how many we did. Maybe Joe?
Two.
Okay.
Two.
Okay. And then the other question is, what's conducted 5 source control inspections at various business meetings? Is that you're looking to make sure that they have their right?
Grease traps, that they're handling their liquid waste in the appropriate manners. We don't have local limits, so we don't have a full pretreatment program. It's mainly fat, oil, and greases that we're concerned about from the commercial businesses.
So that we're not worried about illegal connections or anything like that. It's just whether they've got the proper equipment.
Well, we're worried about illegal connections. It's just the source control is for mainly for fats, oils, and greases. Make sure they have a properly maintained grease trap before discharging to the waste collection system.
Okay, and wastewater operations. Just a personal curiosity: who's your certifying lab? Who certifies our lab or the city's lab?
I don't know. Maybe Joe can answer that question.
It's through the state Department of Health Services. It's called eLab. It's what they do. Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program. So, and that program actually is changing as of this year. It's going to go more to a national program, but currently it's still through a state agency.
So they pick a lab for you to send samples to, and.
No, we actually order unknown samples come in every year, and we have to actually test the unknowns and get certified performance checks that way, and then they come in and they do an inspection.
Okay.
So,
yeah. I assume you do well.
We actually do extremely well here.
Good.
Our unknowns are always right around above 95%. I believe this year it was around the 98% recovery, which is extremely well.
Yeah, it used to be, or when I did that a couple times, it was 80% was considered passing, so sounds good. All right. I think that's oh, nope, a couple more. And we did the string gauge. Yep, I think we've got it all.
Okay,
Okay. Chris?
I'm ready.
Oh, wait, Stu.
I've just got some questions on the Morro Bay Transit. I did have a chance to ride it last week, and I talked to the rangers and talked to several people on it and so on. And it's a good program, no doubt about it. One of my questions are, they seem to be diverting off of the planned route to drop people off and pick people up. Is that typical of what happens, Rob? Or here
Yeah.
comes the answer.
Explain how the deviated fixed route works.
Yes, the deviated fixed route, it operates on a fixed route, and when it's in various parts of town, it can deviate off that route up to 3/4 of a mile to pick up passengers who've made prearranged trips, so they can go curb to curb. And so that's the call-a-ride portion of the deviated fixed route.
Okay, so they're still able to make the next stop in time because we've planned for the
Correct.
time to do
We
it.
have certain time points throughout the route where it's actually marked on the schedule, and then the in-between time is that sort of flex time to be able to go off route to pick up any prearranged trips. So we do kind of limit the capacity available for those bump outs in between those time points. And so we haven't had any issues at this point of deviating off and then not making the next time point.
I talked to some of the people of staying at the campgrounds in both North and South Morro, and it seems to be that the transit seems to be a popular thing with them, although there was some confusion about when it comes and when it'll be there and so on. I understand North Morro, they put the bus on or put the trolley car on the end of this month. Is that true?
The trolley service is a seasonal service, and it will start at the end of May. Memorial Day weekend is the inauguration for the season. And that
May.
trolley does go through the campgrounds in the north and the south. The transit bus doesn't go through the parks, but it does have a stop up on, I think it's Beachcomber. So people from the campground can walk up the steps and pick up the transit service there.
The rangers did suggest that it'd be nice to have a sign that they could put in the window out there, because people come up and ask them, when does the trolley come? And
we do when the season before it starts up. We're gonna have our new brochures, and they get taken around to the businesses as well as the campgrounds, so that they can have those posted. And we were actually even talking about maybe getting some Morro Bay Transit signage in the campground area near where we have the trolley stop, to be able to let them know, hey, during the week when the trolley's not running, we do have this additional transit service that is available, and here's where you would go access it and the days and the times.
I also noticed that in the bus I was riding, there's no signs in there from merchants
Correct.
soliciting. Do we plan to have a program where we go out and actually talk to the merchants and solicit them to buy advertising?
It is something that has been sort of on the list and sort of not. It's transit advertising on our year-round service is a little different than the trolley advertising. You're going to have different businesses who might be interested in that, and it's fewer of the local businesses because we're already a walking billboard that they see. Businesses that we're going around. But it is something that through the short-range transit plan, as part of the marketing aspect, wanting to have a discussion about, do we want to do some kind of advertising on the transit bus, and what might that be? Might it be something inside that your captive audience that's riding, or is it something on the outside, like a wrap, either on the windows or the one side of the bus or the rear of the bus, which is tending to be more prevalent in the transit industry for your year-round services. So that is something that we'd want to look at and talk with through the short-range transit plan to see what might we be able to do, and how might that work, and how much revenue we might be able to generate.
Yeah, and in talking to some of the people taking the bus when I rode it, there seems to be a little confusion over where does it go and where does it stop and that kind of thing. So perhaps some rather large signs inside the bus saying we stop here and here and here, and these facilities are available at those particular stops and so on would be something good, and it'd promote business for our city too. So that's something we might think about. The diversion, now there's two types of buses, isn't there? There's the one that runs the fixed route, and then you can get on the phone and make an appointment and they'll come up. But it seems to be kind of, if you call on a Friday afternoon or a Friday, they put you on a Monday schedule.
It's the same service. So the deviated fixed route or the fixed route and the call a ride, it's the same bus. And you're supposed to call the day before to schedule your trip. We do sometimes take same-day calls if there's available capacity for the trip and the time that's being asked for. So usually, if you're wanting schedule a ride for Monday, you're calling on Friday for that. If you're wanting to schedule a ride for Wednesday, you're calling on Tuesday.
Okay, so they can't call that particular day and get somebody to come and pick them up.
Potentially they could. The dispatch is from 8 to 10 in the morning, so that's when you can call in and schedule trips. And you can ask, hey, I know I'm supposed to call yesterday, but I had something come up. Is there any way at this particular time at this location that you could pick me up and drop me off at this other location? And then do a return trip. And so the dispatcher would be looking and seeing what are the current trips that are already scheduled, and can that individual's request be squeezed in or not. And sometimes they are able to accommodate, sometimes they're not, and then they see if there's some flexibility with the rider. Can they go at a different time during that day in order to make that trip, or schedule it for a different day?
Yeah, it seems to be, in talking to some people in the campground, it seems to be something that could be popular if it was, properly identified and promoted. And that may be a benefit for merchants in town and so on.
It is something that the contractor and I have talked about. The general manager is doing a little more promotion of the year-round service in the campground area to let them know that in addition to the trolley, which only is seasonal, we do have a year-round service, because we're starting to see more people coming in throughout the year and not, we have the influx, the major influx is during the summer season, but we do have these off seasons where we still have some individuals who are coming into town and utilizing the campground. So it is another option for them instead of getting in their car or having to walk.
Yeah, and having to drive a car. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, I have one quick one. Under your trees, urban forest management, you always include about the nesting season. No public right-of-way trees will be trimmed or removed unless in the case of an emergency, and private trees cannot be removed during nesting season. I just got in the mail the weed abatement, the notice to clear weeds and debris, and I think it would be helpful if that language that you use, that you ask the fire department to include that, because they talk about removing trees and limbs and of that nature. So both of you should be working together, I think, in the future on that.
We'll work with the fire marshal on getting that language common to both documents. With
no other comments on the director's report, we'll go to B2. It's preliminary findings from the draft sewer and water rate study update. And we'll let Mr. Livick kick this off.
Sure. Then that's literally what I'm going to do. I'm going to kick it over to Mike Nunley. He's our water reclamation facility program manager, and he's going to get an overview of the project and then get into the preliminary findings on the rate analysis based on that project. So take it away, Mike.
Thanks, Rob. I'm going to introduce Eileen Shields. She's a senior engineer with my company, and she's been the primary author on the Master Water Reclamation Plan. So I'm going to ask her to start with the presentation and take it away.
Okay, thanks. Good evening, good afternoon. Again, my name is Eileen Shields. I'm with Michael K. Nunley and Associates, and for those of you that are not too familiar with the project, we're the program managers for the Water Reclamation Facility project. A little overview of what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to go over the goals for this presentation and this update to your board. I'll cover the community project, or the WRF project goals that were set by the community. I'll give a brief project background, just for some of you might not be familiar with the project. Some of you are very familiar, so I apologize if you've already seen a lot of this information before, but we thought it was important to go over it. And then we'll talk about the recommended project, and Mike will be covering the preliminary findings from the draft rate study. So our goals for today's presentation are mainly to provide the preliminary findings from the draft rate study, provide you with the opportunity to ask any questions you might have about the WRF project or these preliminary rate findings. And we'd really like to get your input on some of the options that the draft rate study is considering, namely the project financing alternatives and the rate implementation options, and also some of the billing alternatives that we're looking at. So I'm going to review the project and give some background, again, for those of you that are not too familiar with the WRF project. We thought it was important to start with the community project goals, because they're really the basis for all of the work that's been going on this project and the recommendations that are coming out of these planning reports and studies that we've been putting together. The goals were adopted by City Council after several rounds of community workshops that were done a few years ago. And these next few slides summarize them. One of the main goals is to produce tertiary disinfected wastewater. And the Water Reclamation Facility, the preliminary planning, is accounting for this, the work that occurred with the facility master plan. Another goal is to produce reclaimed wastewater cost effectively. This was reviewed in the Master Water Reclamation Plan, and looking at including reclamation as early as possible has the potential to reduce long-term costs. One of the early goals was to allow for on-site composting and beneficial reuse of the biosolids, which are a byproduct of wastewater treatment. And the Facility Master Plan looked at this, and they're not recommending on-site composting, because of potential neighborhood compatibility issues, odor issues, but also they found that a regional facility would be more cost effective to continue to haul those biosolids off to a regional facility that's going to be composting them with biosolids from other wastewater treatment facilities in the area. Another goal is to look at designing for energy recovery. This was considered in the Facility Master Plan. Treat for contaminants of emerging concern. It's included in the treatment evaluation, and it's really looking at the best available treatments that could account for this goal and treat for those contaminants of emerging concern. One of the goals is to allow for other municipal uses at the WRF site. It's been talked about a lot, and the Facility Master Plan allows for this possibility. It looks at potential space planning for some of these goals, but it's important to note that those other municipal uses are not included in the program budget. Ensuring compatibility with neighboring land uses is a community goal, and it was definitely considered in the siting studies. I'll go over that history briefly. The Facility Master Plan considered this mainly for siting and architectural considerations for the WRF facility and the buildings that are going to be incorporated there. And the EIR is going to be looking at that further. And another goal was that the water reclamation facility be operational within 5 years. It's a tight time frame. We've been working earnestly to try and keep that program on schedule. And at this time, we're on schedule for a WRF to be operational by mid-2021. That meets that 5-year goal. And after going through the analysis with the Master Water Reclamation Plan, we're finding that we really see the potential to construct the recycled water project concurrently. That was originally planned as a two-phase project. We thought there was a likelihood that you would need another 2 years to consider what to be done with this recycled water or the treated effluent. But there's a lot of cost savings. There's some preliminary information that was done, and we're seeing that it's feasible to construct it concurrently, which could really reduce long-term costs. So I'll go over the main background, and it's hard to kind of shove it into a few slides. We've been working on this project for a few years. But briefly, the existing wastewater treatment plant is on Atascadero Road. It's west of Highway 1 on the coast. And as you probably know, it treats wastewater from both the city of Morro Bay and the Cayucas area. The plant is jointly owned by the city and the Cayucas Sanitary District. And they'd been planning a major upgrade to improve treatment at the existing facility to address the aging infrastructure and improve the treatment. The wastewater treatment plant is over 60 years old. Through this effort and the permitting process, in January of 2013, the California Coastal Commission denied the coastal development permit for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades at the site. And this really brought about the extensive siting studies to determine the best location for a new water reclamation facility. And there was a lot of studies and options reports that were completed. The program management team conducted multiple public meetings and workshops to collect input on these options and develop the community goals that I just went over. And at some point in this process, the Cayucas Sanitary District started investigating the potential to pursue their own project. In April 2015, the CSD formally pulled out of the joint project and decided to pursue their own water reclamation facility. They're calling it the Sustainable Water Project, I believe. And they're going down that course. So the siting studies for the city's project continued through the first part of 2016. Early reports recommended a wharf site in the Morro Valley. This was mainly due to reduced project costs because of the proximity to the city's existing infrastructure, where they're close to where the existing sewer collection system terminates down there near the existing wastewater treatment plants. We've got water infrastructure nearby, and there's also potential recycled water opportunities near the Morro Valley and in the Morro Valley. Through the process, concerns about neighborhood compatibility at these sites in the Morro Valley grew to an extent that the program team performed additional site comparisons at the direction of City Council and determined that the South Bay Boulevard site carried a lower risk with it with regard to completing a project within that 5-year time frame. In May of 2016, the South Bay Boulevard site was recommended most achievable for the reasons I just described, and in June of 2016, the City Council selects the South Bay Boulevard site for detailed studies, and that really allowed the technical studies, the biological, cultural, geotechnical studies, survey work, everything that's needed to get pulled into the facility master plan and the EIR. They were able to conduct those studies at that time. So a lot of those studies were completed in August of 2016. The CEQA team released their notice of preparation for the environmental study and the impact report at that month as well. The city executed a memorandum of understanding with the property owner at the South Bay Boulevard site in October. And in November of 2016, the draft facility master plan was completed. This is one of the major planning documents that allowed us to begin to pull together our program level project costs. It describes everything that's going to be needed to transport the wastewater from the existing collection system to the new wharf site, the type of treatment and other facilities that are needed at the wharf, and then also looked at advanced treatment that might be needed for a range of potential effluent uses, whether that's irrigation or full indirect potable reuse. It also discusses direct potable reuse and that potential. And it lays out some estimated costs and a few options and recommendations for the city. The draft Master Water Reclamation Plan was released just last month in March. And that document looks at the recycled water opportunities, evaluates a range of potential uses. It determines the potential feasible recycled water alternatives, and then it went further with those alternatives and evaluated, based on the community project goals, evaluated those feasible alternatives and make some recommendations. And I'll go over that in a bit. So the plan, the draft EIR is planned to be released in August of 2017. That's on schedule. Certification following up in the fall of 2017. We're looking to award a contract to a design-build team for construction of the water reclamation facility project in May of 2018. Design would follow later that summer, and construction is anticipated to begin in June of 2019 to be completed in May of 2021. So with some of these main planning documents completed, what we know now, the facility master plan really confirms that we can build a wharf at the South Bay Boulevard site that meets the community project goals. Preliminary modeling and hydrogeologic studies indicate that groundwater injection and extraction appears feasible. And we're estimating that a total wharf project by June of 2021 is possible. Again, that's looking at providing the recycled water component 2 years ahead of what was previously anticipated. The total wharf project, looking at groundwater injection and extraction, can supplement the city's water supply and really provide water independence, reduce your reliance on imported water. And some of the advantages of accelerating that recycled water component of the project, it potentially opens you up and makes the city's project more eligible for grant financing because it includes that recycled water component. There's obviously some long-term construction cost savings because you're not paying for inflation as we move on in time, and it allows you to more quickly have that potential to reduce state water use. I'm going to go over the range of costs here briefly, just get it out in front. I'll go over each of the alternatives that were evaluated in detail in the Master Water Reclamation Plan. But the Master Water Reclamation Plan looks at a range of alternatives, and it provides a baseline alternative, what we're calling Alternative Zero, which is the no recycled water project. Cost is estimated at $124 million, and though it doesn't meet the city's project goals, the community project goals for producing recycled water, we felt it was important to provide that baseline. We thought the question was going to be asked, well, what if we don't do recycled water? This project, the Alternative Zero, would be the project that's anticipated to meet the minimum requirements to discharge to the ocean with a wharf at the South Bay Boulevard site. If you did include recycled water, the feasible project alternatives are estimated to range between $153 million to $168 million. And the recommended recycled water project, which I'll describe here momentarily, is estimated at $167 million. So the Master Water Reclamation Plan came up with 4 main alternatives. There's really 5, but after we got through the analysis, we discovered that alternatives 3 and 4 are really not that much different. They're within a couple $100,000 of each other in cost, and they only vary by the approximate location of potential injection wells. We have the Alternative Zero, which I just described, the no recycled water project. Alternative 1 looks at the potential to do urban reuse, urban irrigation and commercial recycled water uses throughout the city to offset potable water supply. Alternative 2 looks at, it's an agricultural exchange alternative, which I'll describe that when we get to that slide. And then alternatives 3 and 4 are both indirect potable reuse projects. So let's talk about alternative 0, the no recycled water project. Like I said, this is a water reclamation facility at the South Bay Boulevard site. We'd have a pipeline pumping the city's raw wastewater to the South Bay Boulevard site, treatment there, and then discharge back to the existing ocean outfall, which is located at the existing wastewater treatment plant. Treatment would only consist of secondary disinfected treatment, which is the minimum requirements for ocean discharge. Again, it does not meet the community goals for tertiary treatment. There's no potential water supply benefit, but we evaluated it because it represents the project needed to meet the discharge requirements for ocean discharge. And since you have an existing ocean outfall, it's one of the first logical disposal alternatives if you're going down that route. So the total program cost for this alternative is $124 million. That includes an estimated 25% construction contingency on the subtotal, the construction cost subtotal. And let's talk a minute about total program costs and what that includes. We're covering the anticipated construction costs. It includes engineering and design, procurement of a design-build team, project administration, construction management, has an allowance in there for permitting, environmental monitoring, and mitigation. It includes the estimated cost for property acquisition for the South Bay Boulevard site for the water reclamation facility. It also includes demolition at the existing wastewater treatment plant and the city's anticipated share of that cost. And then, of course, the 25% construction contingency. So that's wrapped up. We tried to identify all that we knew now that would be part of the project, and then include a contingency for what we don't know. Alternative 1 is urban reuse. It's looking at approved urban irrigation and commercial uses that might be able to use recycled water as opposed to potable water to offset the city's potable water demand. And the way we narrowed down potential users, we looked at historically identified users in the city, potential recycled water users, and we considered the pipeline alignment that has been laid out in the facility master plan. We know we're going to be likely running down this route with the raw wastewater force main from the existing collection system, and we'll have a pipeline coming back to the outfall. So what are the urban users along this route? And those are shown briefly in the circles. The different colors represent the different types of use. But the big downfall to this project is the potential water supply benefit is only 45 acre-feet per year. The city's water demand in 2015 was somewhere around 1,100 acre-feet. And so the big user that's been identified, at least on this side of Highway 41, not including the agricultural landowners, which I'll talk about with the next the next alternative, really is the golf course. And so this project also includes a pipeline over to the golf course where the county would pick it up and pump it to their tank on Black Hill. That's an estimated, it's just under 310 acre-feet per year, but it's not included in this potential water supply benefit because the golf course doesn't currently use city water. They have a non-potable well that they pump from. So the estimated total program cost, including that 25% contingency, is $153 million for the urban reuse alternative. The next alternative we looked at, alternative 2 in the report, is titled Agricultural Exchange. And this was born out of the historically identified recycled water opportunities, really the main opportunity that has been identified in previous reports was the agricultural landowners along Highway 41. However, we're really looking for a potential water supply benefit. We're viewing this water as a resource now and not looking to just give it away or dispose of it, which we could do through the existing ocean outfall. So to make it, to provide a potential water supply benefit to the city with this alternative, the project envisions a potable water pipeline coming back from those agricultural landowners that currently pump groundwater. So why would it be attractive? You know, why would a agricultural landowner provide potable water back to the city and trade recycled water? This alternative envisions a reduced ratio. So the city or the project would be providing 2 times the amount of recycled water to the landowner for half the return in potable water, or a 2-to-1 ratio. This, of course, has some complications. You would need to get into contracts and negotiations. You'd have to have willing landowners to enter into this. You'd have to have treatment that would be acceptable for those various growing uses, mostly avocado. So there's some salt removal that would be required, and that's included in this estimated cost. The cost for this alternative is $168 million, including that $26.4 million of construction contingency. Alternatives 3 and 4 are presented here as the indirect potable reuse alternative. They're shown together because they vary just slightly depending on anticipated location of the injection wells. I don't know if you can see it very well, but we have 2 potential locations that were studied through some pretty detailed groundwater modeling and hydrologic review. They're on either side of Highway 1, kind of near the intersection of Highway 1 and Highway 41. So there's 2 potential pipeline routes running on either side of the highway to those 2 locations. So the concept would be to treat the water, the wastewater at the water reclamation facility. In order to meet the Title 22 permit requirements, you would have full advanced treatment, which includes reverse osmosis and advanced oxidation on the recycled water. It would be pumped down to the Morrow Valley, and those injection wells would, we'd need to do a siting study that's recommended in the report to determine the final location of those wells. But from there, it would be blended, it's mixed with the groundwater in the Morrow Valley and extracted downstream at a minimum travel time, which is dictated by the permit requirements and would be modeled and pilot tested at city's existing extraction wells. And then it would be further treated to reduce nitrates that are already in the groundwater, the Morrow Valley groundwater there, at the existing water treatment plant. The potential water supply benefit based on the preliminary modeling that GSI Water has done is in the range of 940 acre-feet per year to about 1,100 acre-feet per year. The total program cost for this alternative is $167 million, including that contingency. And this slide just provides a summary of the program costs for the various alternatives. We're looking at a range, again, of $124 million to $167 million for the recommended project, which is indirect potable reuse.
Eileen, can I ask a question real
Yes,
quick before I
sure.
move on? In that $167 million on the indirect potable, I assume it includes the cost of the injection wells to put the water back into the aquifer. Does it also include the capital cost of probably having to expand the RO system or the advanced treatment once you pull it out of the ground again, or new wells to try and get 1,100 acre-feet out of the ground? I'm not sure the existing wells and well pumps can honestly handle that flow. You may have, I don't know. That's the question I'm asking.
So the injection wells are included.
Right.
With the existing modeling that they've done, and they did some pump tests at the city's existing wells, is also GSI Water, who's been doing these preliminary studies, and we should have that report released pretty soon, probably later this
So
month.
you're not
hopefully.
looking probably to have to pop new wells to try and...
No, they anticipate that the city's
okay.
existing wells could handle the extraction.
And the pumping system in those wells is adequate to produce?
I might let Rob speak to that.
Do you follow where I'm going? I'm wondering
Yeah.
if there's going to be additional capital cost.
There might be
to
some...
get it out of the ground after you put it in the ground, so to speak.
There's additional capital costs, but they've already been planned for. Even if we don't do this system, we need to add calcium carbonate capacity at our desal plant. That's one of the limiting factors of using that desal for full production, is because we have to add hardness back to the water before we put it in the distribution system because it's too aggressive. We can pump from our brackish water wells about 850 gallons a minute, which I'm confusing units here.
That's fine.
I don't have the acre-foot conversion memorized or anymore, but that 850 gallons a minute comes very close to meeting our demand.
1,100 acre
Yes.
feet. Oh, okay. But I guess where I want to go with this is because I'm trying to get my arms around, how much this water is truly going to cost to produce, and not just to get it into the ground, but to get it back out of the ground, run it through the RO train, and get it into your distribution system. And I'm not sure if that's included in these numbers.
No, we pay that cost right now to use the Morrow Valley groundwater. It's about $1,000 an acre foot to pull water out of the Morrow Valley and get it to treat and get it into the distribution system.
So the $1,000 would be in addition to servicing the debt on the difference between the 124 and the 167.
Yeah.
Or...
But we're paying $1,000 an acre foot every time we use that water right now.
Right, but I meant when I'm trying to look at the total cost, you got to service that debt of about $43 million every year. And then you do have also an added cost, the O&M, I'll call it, of the $1,000 an acre foot to pump it out of the ground once you put it in there. Is that logic set right?
I think it's right, but we're actually already paying currently already paying $1,000 an acre foot when we use that water. As opposed to about the $2,000 acre foot, $2,200 acre foot for state water.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Eileen.
One of a related point is one of the things that hasn't been factored into this analysis is the savings if you aren't using state water. So that because that's 2,200 an acre foot, somewhere in that neighborhood currently.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm trying to get an idea of what state water costs versus how much it costs to produce this water, counting that you got to service the debt for the larger facility. And that's all I'm trying to get to at the end of the day. Thank you.
Are we going to wait till the end and then have questions? Because I've got a bunch I've been making notes on.
Okay.
And I'm sure Steve has too. And
Whatever you prefer. I know that...
Why don't we take a break for questions between because you're just about done with
I've got 2 more slides on mine.
And then before we get into how this impacts rates, we can take questions on this portion of it and take public comment on this portion of it, and then move on to the rate issues. Thanks.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Oops. We weren't going to do that one. So in addition to the capital costs, the Master Water Reclamation Plan evaluated annual costs. We looked at qualitative criteria also. The annual costs are going to be covered in the rate study, so I felt it was better to put it with the rate impacts portion of the slides. Qualitative criteria evaluation was based on the community project goals and included neighborhood compatibility, the schedule, potential water supply benefit, and others. The Master Water Reclamation Plan ended up recommending the Indirect Potable Reuse Project, which is alternatives 3 and 4, differing only by where we end up potentially siting those injection wells. because it best fulfills the council-adopted community project goals for producing reclaimed water. It has the highest and most reliable potential water supply benefit, 900 to 1,100 acre-feet per year, which is near the city's current water demand. And the city could really significantly reduce or even eliminate their reliance on imported water, which is also a council goal for the city. The least expensive alternative is the No Recycled Water Project, Alternative 0, followed by Urban Reuse, the Alternative 1. But Alternative 0 doesn't provide any water supply benefit to the city, and it doesn't meet the community project goals. Alternative 1 provides the least potential water supply benefit at 45.4 acre-feet per year. So I'll take any questions on that side of the presentation that you might have.
Okay, thank you. I think with Rob's suggestion, we'll open it up to public comment for any comments they have on this part first. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment. Okay, then we'll close public. Oh, okay, here we are. We do have a person. So,
I've got to ask it. It's just.
Okay, if you would please state your name for the record and.
Sure, Julie Kliegel, live in Morro Bay on Bonita Street. This is just sticking there, and it's the prior rate study, and it's when we were partnership with Cayucas, and it says it was $74.7 million. And I'm just confused how it's got to 160. Well, that was without recycling, so, the 104, 124. I just don't quite understand how in 2015 it was, 74, and how. And I'm not hearing why it's been increased so greatly. And that's my question, and I hope it gets answered.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Would staff like to make a stab at trying to answer?
Sure, I'll take a shot at that, and I'm going to ask Rob to jump in and correct me because he guided the first rate study. The $74 million that was used in the prior rate study was considered to be a, quote, phase 1 water reclamation facility, meaning recycling was not included, and it was based on a partnership with Cayucas Sanitary District. It was based on a site in Morro Valley at the Rancho Colina property, and there were as through the facility master planning and site planning process. Not only did we know at the time that was not a complete project cost, but things we discovered as part of the master planning process in order to develop the overall budget. There were things that we uncovered and the facility master plan team uncovered that weren't known at the time. For instance, the costs for decommissioning of the existing plant site in some of those original estimates that came out of the old report for the master plan back at the existing plant site. Those plant decommissioning costs were very low. There was a lot of detailed flow analysis looking at wet weather conditions. There was a need for what's called equalization storage to try to buffer large flows when you're trying to treat water to a very high level for reuse or for filtration. There was a need for that. There was, when we looked at the siting back in spring of last year, we sent information out to the community as part of that to say to gauge the public and see if moving the plant to the South Bay Boulevard site, if that was worth the extra, and I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 a month or something in terms of rate impact to be over at the South Bay Boulevard site versus the other versus the sites over in the Morro Valley. So it really is. It's really as Rob likes to say. It's a math problem. It's when you take the city's goals and you go through the master planning process and you pick a site. Then these are the numbers that you come up with. A lot of the numbers that were used in the past, we had footnotes on them and explained real clearly in the reports that those were partial cost opinions to allow us to compare sites. just to allow us to do economic comparisons among the sites. We knew at the time the cost opinions weren't complete, and we tried to continually remind folks we've got to get through the master plans and get those done, and to really know what the full cost opinion needs to be. And so that's the reason that we're at the cost we're at now versus and at the time that the rate increase was passed. And Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know one of the big drivers was the need to was the need to bring in more revenue for the water fund. And that was an urgent need at the time, but maybe you can kind of correct me on that if that's not the case.
Sure. The increase of water and sewer rates a couple of years ago was driven mainly by water rate. We needed to do a water rate increase. We hadn't, I'm going to get the date wrong because I wasn't here when the last time it happened, but somewhere in the mid to late 90s was the last time water rates were increased. And the last year before we increased water rates, we were dipping into our reserves to the tune of $900,000 a year to pay for current year operations. Not a sustainable practice. We also knew that we had a very expensive wastewater project looming on the horizon, and we needed to get rates pointed in the right direction. We didn't have a facilities master plan. We really didn't have a firm site, but we had some information at that point in time. The costs were based on basically an equivalent project to we were looking at cost comparisons amongst a variety of sites, and I think the project was to build an oxidation ditch at that location, and that's how it was not a project that would probably have been ever fully developed or built, but it was the information we had at the time. We also knew that the rates were only good for 5 years, and we'd have to be looking at new rates after that time, and we'd have a facilities master plan done at that point and have detailed budget information, because that's really the main point of the facilities master plan. One is to drive the design decisions that are made to develop plans to construct the wastewater plant. The other is to develop a budget that you can base your rates on. We were still at least 3 years out from having a facilities master plan, yet we knew we needed to point rates up because we knew it was going to be a very expensive project. So we were still working with Cayucas at that point in time, and this seemed like a reasonable number to use at that point in time. As it turns out, it was very low.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I open it up to the rest of the board, since my time here is sort of short, I'm going to jump in. Normally the chair would be the last. I won't be able to be here for the rest of the presentation, and most of my comments or the couple of comments I have are a part of that. By the presentation, the information we've been given, I'm supporting, the recommendations for the, let's see, the indirect potable reuse, either alternative 3 and 4. I do have a question on, because the decommissioning of the old plant expense is listed in the this whole budget number. Is there a designation by the city as to what's going to happen to the decommissioned, after the plant is decommissioned, what the disposition of the property is going to be as far as for sale or for lease, where those funds would be directed?
That has not been determined yet.
Okay.
Currently, if we were to sell that, the site was purchased with wastewater funds. the wastewater fund needs to be reimbursed for those costs. One option could be that the wastewater fund sells it to the general fund, and the general fund develops the property. That could be an option. I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but I've seen that happen in other agencies. But the wastewater fund needs to be reimbursed for the value of that property. Also, if we were to sell the property, the Cayuga Sanitary District needs to be reimbursed because they are a partial owner of that property. So it's not just city-owned property, it's jointly owned property down there with our partners in the Cayuga Sanitary District.
Okay, that's what I thought. My concern is that I hope that, and it's too early now for the board to make a motion, but I'll give you the wording of a motion that I have put together, and then as the board continues, if they want to use that motion later, then, I hope they would. It would be to recommend to the City Council to designate all proceeds from the sale or lease revenues from the current water treatment plant property after it is decommissioned to be used to offset or reduce the water and sewer rates. And the reason for my direction so that the City Council would make that policy at this time so that 5-10 years down the road that they're whoever happens to be on the council at that time, I know they would have the authority to change the policy, but it would be necessary for them to go through the public process so that people know that their rates are going to be affected by that. So I hope that the members of the board take that into consideration when you're talking after you've gotten all of the information about the rates that are going to be presented.
I have a question, though, on what Rick brought up, and on the land sale of that, I don't know if it could be used to the water fund or purely to the sewer side of the rates, correct? Was that based on wastewater only when they purchased that land at all?
I believe that it was purchased by the whatever pre-existed. It was built in 53 on that site, and the land was purchased at that time. So,
but I think you brought up the fact that the monies would go back
to the sewer fund.
Just the sewer. The reason I'm bringing this up, Rick, is I don't know if they could use it to offset the water fund side of it.
Yeah, I mentioned that because the study right now is not distinguishing between water and sewer. So the rate set structure that would be done, mainly that it would end up back in the fund and not the general fund. Gotcha. It would have a proprietary claim to it.
It would offset basically future costs and rates.
And since the rationale could be used that, okay, we spent $5,000 for the property back in 53, now it's worth $1 million. I wouldn't want the $5,000 to be returned to the wastewater fund saying, well, we've repaid for the land. That's why I included comments about all lease revenues. I see it sort of like the harbor lease funds, that it has a specific designation and it goes to the harbor fund. It's it stays in that enterprise fund year after year after year. So that's I would like to have that so that it helps the citizens of Morro Bay with their rate structures now and in the future. Anyway, that's my rationale for that, and I hope that you take it under consideration, and a single motion to the council would be the best way to go so that it's clear. With that, I'm going to leave the meeting as I had indicated earlier and turn the chair of the meeting over to Steve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rick. Okay. Moving right along, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to the board. I think public comment was done. Christian, do you have any questions, concerns of staff? It's a green light.
Oh, perfect. Just first of all, on the legal side, does Cayucas have the ability just to pull out of the relationship? So usually in a contract, there's some contractual obligation if you've been in there since 1953 with them. So one, on the contractual side, are they able just to pull out? Obviously, maybe if it's a new facility, there might be some language to let them out, but not if the facility has to be decommissioned or upgraded. And then, as he brought up with the sale of the property, are we required just to pay them back for the funds they put in at the time of the purchase, or do they have, a right to the equity if the property sells higher than what it was purchased for, or anything along those lines?
Those are great questions. I wish we had our legal counsel here to answer those. I would venture to guess that we would be obligated to pay for the equity. I believe our agreement with them allows, through mutual agreement, us to exit out of the agreement, and there's no prohibition from either side constructing their own facilities. We've had some preliminary discussions between our legal counsel and their legal counsel on how to modify the agreement, because there still will be joint facilities down there. We jointly own an outfall that we'll both still need to use and maintain, so there still will be jointly owned, and there still is a sewer line in Main Street that may still need to be used by them. So we've just started that process with the sanitary district.
So is part of the old facility going to have to be, like a lift station or anything for the new facility?
There will need to be a lift station down there near the existing facility. I don't think on the existing facility is the proposed location for it. So there will be a lift station. The proposed location is actually at the city's corporation yard, right where our parks shed is the optimal spot for it. I don't think the parks guys like that idea, but...
So I had a couple other questions. I won't hog the mic. I probably wrote too many notes. With the proposed water injection wells, so Monterey County just passed a law to stop water injection. So do we have any, do we know if by the time we make this proposal and we plan to drill water injection wells, if there's any litigious concerns or any concerns of any new laws that are planning to come up as far as county voting that could prohibit us from doing the water injection wells? I know it's been a big problem in Monterey County up in San Ardo. Okay. In particular right now, and so water injection wells. Water injection wells too. Yeah, and so that was passed, and so obviously they're neighbors, and so by the time that this gets to fruition and the wells actually drilled or ready to go in, we could find ourselves without permits.
It's kind of interesting because I'm not familiar with the injection regulation that you're talking about, but Monterey is currently pursuing a project. Several water agencies in the county are pursuing a project to inject treated wastewater at what's called the Monterey Pure Water Facility to supply water over on the coast. One difference, the injection of treated wastewater for for supplementing groundwater supplies. It's been done several places around the state. There's the Water Factory 21 down in Orange County that's been doing it for years for seawater intrusion. Orange County Water District and Orange County Sanitation District jointly own the groundwater replenishment system that also does injection. That type of injection and the type of injection we're talking about here is quite a bit different than what a lot of the oil operations do. In this case with Morro Bay, the injection is into a groundwater aquifer that's fairly shallow. So you're not injecting into like a pressurized aquifer that's covered with a layer of bedrock or anything like that. So a lot of the geologic concerns, a lot of things that happen with deep water injection, you don't have those risks with these types of projects. Just because it's of the volumes of water you're injecting are a lot smaller in a lot of cases, and where you're putting it in the ground is in an area that you're not causing a lot of the same risks that you do with deep injection of like brine, for example, wastewater from petroleum. So
the proposed site, is it property that's for sale? Is it property that we can get to? And in all these proposals, for any of the proposals with the proposed lines, are they on current city easements? Are they easements we have to purchase? Are they easements that the city has to condemn? I mean, are those costs all factored into the plan?
Those costs are factored into the plan. A couple of one of the benefits of the alignment on the west side, which is along Quintana Road, basically, is all in city right-of-way. So that pipeline alignment's all in city right-of-way. The injection well locations on the west side could also be located on city property or possibly some Dynegy property. And so that property, particularly for the city property, would be fairly easy for the city to put injection wells there. Mm-hmm. Over on the east side, the amount of space that you need for injection wells is actually very small. We show some very large areas there that are hatched out just to show generally where injection wells could be located. But the wellheads themselves, we're talking 3 to 4 injection wells. Each one of those looks like a drinking water well, like one of your municipal wells or one of your irrigation wells here at the city. Those can be spread out. They can be placed in right-of-way, or we can look at lots that are available. And so we have some room there to get those located. Again, on the west side, we have some city property where those wells could possibly be located. Mm-hmm. So that is factored into the cost opinions and into the considerations.
And in the water injection, since you said I think Chorro Creek is our highest available source, whether we use it or not, in any of these injections, does the state water let us offset or change any exchange for pumping there?
What it will in Morro Valley, and then with water rights in general, and we've reviewed this with the city's attorney, and then they have a specialist in water rights also at their firm. The ability, we can extract what we inject. So we can basically add that onto our water right. Whatever we put in the ground, we can take it out.
And lastly, can I afford to take a shower after this, or is it just up for debate?
It's I'll be honest.
I'm just joking.
No, I hear you. The thing I would say is it's a lot of money for a small community, and we all recognize that. We'll talk a little bit about some of the cost saving, some of the strategies, and some of the things we'll do, and talk a little bit about what the philosophy is behind these types of rate increases too, because it's very important to all of us.
Thank you, Christian. Before we go further, I kind of want to go through with the board a little bit. They're giving you background information on the WRF facility, and there's actually another committee, WRF CAC, where the questions have gone through of the best alignments and things of this nature. I think this was more for a little bit of a historical background that brings us to the rate studies, and that's why we're here tonight. And so I realize I'm kind of more familiar with this because I'm the representative from this board for RFCAC. And I know they threw a bunch of information at you today you probably haven't seen or haven't read. I'd rather probably, because we'll run out of time, not get too deep into why certain decisions were made unless it's a real short question, because they spend, it's a parallel board running through this stuff, and they answer to the city council just like we do. I think at the end of the day, what we want to get to is, do the rates make sense, and how do we get there? And that's not a slight, Christian, because I realize you guys were not familiar. It comes in as like, this is thrown in your face immediately, and it hasn't been up before this board before. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and...
I'd like to add one. I was on at the CFAC yesterday, and so most of this stuff I heard word for word what you was talking about. And it got a little bit testy because, all this stuff was thrown at us. One of the questions which Rob wasn't really able to answer, and maybe you guys looked at it, does it look like in the end, after the State Water Project adds the $20 billion for the bypass and fixing Oroville, what sort of increase of the acre foot per charge? And you told me it was a wild guess yesterday what it might be, but is it going to make it economically feasible in order to walk away from the State Water Project, or would we have to choose something in between, where, say, we reduce our water rights with the state?
The State Water Project has a bunch of work that they need to do. It's a system that is old and needs infrastructure repairs. There's perhaps a $25 billion project to get water through the Delta area that will be spread through all. If there's a project on the State Water Project, every State Water customer is paying their share of that project. So not just Orville and the Delta Project, but as we've seen subsidence in the Central Valley and them needing to realign canals, we'll all, Morro Bay, San Luis Obispo Flood Control District, Metropolitan Water District in LA, we all will pay our fair share. I think there's about 250 million acre feet a year is the average yield of the state water customer at 100% allocation. So we are 1,300 out of 250 millionth of the share of projects on the State Water Project. So that's our share. Not a huge share, but we're talking big numbers too. I think we have reasonably estimated that our current state water cost is about 2,000 to 2,200 acre feet a year. Now that's going to go down slightly in about 5 years because local facilities bonds will pay off. The bonds that were...
I'm sorry, you mean $2,200 per acre foot.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. $2,200 per acre foot. Right. That'll go down slightly because of the local facilities bonds being paid off. The local facilities are the Chorro Valley Pipeline, the pipeline that comes from the turnout in Santa Margarita over to here, and then our share of the pipeline to Polonio Pass water treatment plant, and then the share of the pipeline over to the canal. Those are the local facilities that were built in the 90s to get water over here, and I think we've paid about the city of Morro Bay has paid about $16 million since 96 for those local facilities.
Okey-doke, Jan, I think I'm sorry.
I see John's doing math there. I don't risk doing math. What's that?
Whatever that, so 1.3 divided by 2,500, so it's about 25 million that we would be expected to pay for.
Over some period of time. I'm not sure how long, what the financing would be. I would expect a fairly long term with something in the order of, $25 billion projects, probably 40-ish or more years to pay that back. I could see state water rates staying about what they are, even when we lose our local facilities, and then escalating at some rate. I think in the last water rate, generally they escalate about 5% a year, state water cost, and that's what's in our current rate. So I don't see state water costs going down in the long term, but I do see them going up because of these needed infrastructure projects, and it's, across the country. I won't get up on my ASCE civil engineer soapbox about the unwillingness of us to maintain our infrastructure, but we need to do some good work on public infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Jan, would you go ahead?
I'm also I really support the IPR. I can't think of what it means right now. But anyway, just a question. If we did alternative zero, where we didn't do a recycled project and we stayed on the least expensive one, do you know, or can you sense or foresee that somewhere down the line we're going to be required to add this to that the state laws or state ordinances would ask us to put this in anyway, which would be a greater cost down the line?
We don't know what can happen with ocean discharge, but a couple of challenges with alternative zero that we talk about briefly in the report is the city's current local coastal plan required that you provide 600 and some odd acre feet of water per year for recycled water. So that's in your current local coastal plan. Now you're going through that process now to update that plan. But Coastal Commission policies encourage recycling. And one of the comments on the old project was that the old project, the 2013 did not include a large enough recycled water component early enough. So that's something that would have to be faced with quote alternative zero. We needed to analyze it because as part of the recycled water feasibility study grant program that funded half that from State Water Resource Control Board, they provided $75,000 for that toward that study. You have to look at what they call the no project alternative or no recycling alternative in this case. So that's one of the reasons we looked at it.
So we looked at it, but it doesn't sound wise to choose it because we will be probably having to do it down the line if we don't include it in the recycle part and the whole reuse.
It would run, it was one of the issues before with the old project was having a recycling component.
And then my other question, just out of curiosity, we're talking about the on-site composting, and you would be shipping it out to a regional facility. Where is that regional facility?
There are a couple of contract haulers that basically will come take it, and you pay them to come haul it off and process it for you. And then one of them is Liberty Hauling that the city currently uses. And these local contractors, will work with 40 or 50 small agencies like Morro Bay on a regional scale. They'll come take the waste. They'll have it as part of they'll compost it with a much larger production than you all can. They have a market for it. And what we found in the course of this study is we verified, composting has a lot of odors, requires a lot of space, requires a lot of labor, and the economics compared to having somebody come take it from you after you've dewatered it, just didn't pencil out.
So after you do all this processing, do you anticipate there will be less being hauled away than there is now, or about the same?
You'll have more being hauled away because you're going to go to a higher level of treatment.
Is that it, Jim? Oh, okay. Stu? Any questions?
Just two.
Of the first section.
Two pages.
Yeah, the first section bringing up about the different alternatives that they're going to, looking at for that.
One of the things that concerns me, of course, is I'm confused on what's going on with Cayucas. And, I hear numbers a little bit ago about 940 to 1,100 acre feet of water. Cayucas, we be building the facility large enough to handle Cayucas. Is that correct?
No, the current direction from council is that this is a facility for Morro Bay alone.
Good. So we wouldn't be handling it. We'll send them a letter or something and say, you guys are on your own. Do it as you wish.
And they're running their own project right now. Now, where the two agencies will work together is on that shared ocean outfall, because under alternative 3 or 4, the city will have a brine discharge going out through that. Cayucas is planning to send their treated effluent through that, and then at some point in the future, they may just be sending brine after they do more recycling.
And they're also involved in the decommissioning of the existing.
That's right.
plant.
Yeah, we talked about that before.
The letter that was sent to Cayucas, the last letter that the city of Morro Bay sent was, would you care to reconsider and rejoin us as a common project? And they declined to do that.
Oh, okay. Do you have anything else at this point?
Steve, I don't think so right now.
Oh, okay. I'll go to Chris. I come across.
Yeah, just a question comparing the agricultural exchange and the indirect potable reuse. Is there any other future costs? I mean, cost-wise, they're similar, but obviously with the indirect, we get twice as much water that's usable. On the agricultural exchange, do we save money down the road as far as not having to pump the water back out? Or is there any benefit there?
That's a good question. So the way to look at this would be with agricultural exchange is you would take water that is at the upper end of Morro Valley, and that's what that agricultural entity would be providing to you. They'd pump out that water, they'd send it back to you in a separate pipeline, and you'd be sending them treated wastewater. So you would have, that 500 acre feet a year of water, and you'd be sending them 1,000. So there would have to be just disinfection, but in our analysis we'd included that in the capital cost. There'd be some, and that's a very minor capital cost anyway. That's the assumption, is that would be the only requirement because we're so far up in the basin, upstream of where the nitrates come in.
Okay, so there's in comparing the two, there's really not a big benefit to go agricultural just because we're getting twice as much water going the indirect.
And capital cost is about the same, okay. and you get half the water benefit.
Okay. Just for your edification, Chris, they've come up with the fact that probably that alternative 0 or the 3-4 is probably the two viable ways to go that the city council can make a determination on. The other ones didn't pan out because you got to get farmers involved and they may not wish to, and then you could be held hostage or whatever. Okay, John. I'm sorry, you done, Chris?
Yes.
Oh, okay, John.
Okay, so that's kind of some of the questions which popped up yesterday was the escalation costs were not included in the cost estimate for this thing. And
so what we did is we provided the unescalated costs, 2016 costs or 2017 costs to the rate consultant. They applied escalation factors in their rate study to come up with the rates. Okay. So we left that to the rate consultant.
Okay. That was one of the questions. Are we going to have capacity for future development, and how much are you thinking of in terms of that?
In the facility master plan, that looked at about a 30-year planning horizon, looking at historic growth rates, and so it's all captured there. We worked with community development department to come up with that. So there's margin there to get through that planning horizon.
So, Rob, do you know what the additional capacity will be for the plant over that? Is that like 10% or?
I think it's roughly 10%, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if there were some big annexation or a development pattern that doesn't exist in Morro Bay currently, there would have to be some major changes at the facility, but I would expect that new development would pay 100% of those expansion costs.
Okay. And then the other question there, so if we went to this, pump it into the ground and pump it out, you were saying that we would not need a reservoir for that situation in order to take advantage of that water?
The ground is acting as our reservoir. So it serves two purposes. It's an environmental buffer, and then it acts as a storage reservoir so we can, pump during, we'll be pumping into the ground at a fairly constant rate from the facility, but extracting it as we need it.
About the same rate that you put it in then? Okay. So the reservoir we talk about for the Churro Creek is not a factor in this.
No.
Okay. Let's see now. How much are we paying for equalization storage? Just I don't have the facility master plan.
So it's in the neighborhood right now of about, I want to say a little over 3 million gallons of equalization storage. I think the raw construction cost on that, since it's concrete basins, I want to say it was somewhere 6 to 8 million, somewhere in that neighborhood for that cost.
So if we were able to reduce our peaking factor from 7 to say 3.5, then there'd be only about a $3 million savings for us for the.
Well, and a couple things you've got to factor in with that are equalization is usually a lot less expensive per gallon than chasing infiltration and inflow.
Okay.
Because it can be really hard to find in older sewer systems, particularly hillside areas and places like that. So a lot of plants, similar in situation, similar in age to the collection system here with similar issues, opt to manage the equalization, to provide equalization at the plant, just because it becomes an economic thing. Now, there's a direct benefit to all the infiltration and inflow that the city gets out, because that can reduce some of your operating costs, your pumping costs. And also, the city's going through an I&I study, infiltration and inflow study right now, that's going to be captured in the One Water Plan. Mm-hmm. And if those numbers come down, it's relatively easy. Let's say if they find a silver bullet on infiltration and inflow in the next year, it's relatively easy for us to go down in those design documents and pull that equalization basin down fast. So okay. We'll be ready to respond to that if they get good findings out of that.
All right.
So something we're looking at.
Is that it? No. Okay.
Thank you.
I just have one quick question, because I've seen most all this before.
Probably a couple times by now for you.
And I'll probably get into the cost when you do the second half and get into the actual rate studies. But one thing that did come up in your presentation, I have a question on, is going with alternative zero. It made a comment about, well, you could get grants at this point in time. Would this preclude you couldn't get grants if you decide to create a phase 2 and build the indirect potable reuse as a second phase somewhere in the future?
It definitely makes it definitely improves your ability to get grants if you're shovel ready on a recycled water project, full recycled water project.
But if you do alternative zero, it's the same processes as what you plan with indirect potable without the secondary filtration that's going to happen in RO and shipping it back to the other. I mean, the whole train is the same up to that point.
It could be the front end of the train could look a whole lot like what you wind up with indirect with the water recycling.
I mean, we wouldn't be going backwards to add that.
You could look at that as a phase.
Yeah, and well, the reason I'm asking is because I see rates that almost triple or quadruple where we were at 3 or 4 years ago. And so I know from just, I hate to say from a political sense, I'm real concerned with the escalation in costs on this. And I'm not questioning the costs. I'm really not. It's more the fact of, can this town afford it? And I'll wait for the rate study portion of it. So is there any other questions before we have Eileen go on with the second half? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so are we okay on time?
We're well.
What's your
on P-Web? There's nobody that follows us,
just want to make sure.
We kind of
okay.
go till it's done.
Okay.
Is everybody okay sitting up there, or
do we need a break for 5
Does anybody need a break before we proceed on?
Oh, okay, I'll call for a break of 10 minutes then. Oh.
Okay.
Well, from Morro Bay, we're back from our break and waiting for staff to go ahead and give us the second part of the presentation.
I've got another about 85 slides, but we'll go quickly through them.
Oh, okay.
I'm just joking. So I'm going to give some of the preliminary findings from our rate consultant, Bartle Wells Associate. Alex Handlers is the gentleman with Bartle Wells that's done the work. He was here yesterday for the Citizens Finance Committee. He'll be back for the council meeting next Tuesday. And I'll be glad to respond to any questions I can. If any of them get too much into the weeds on the finance, I'll get answers from him as quickly as we can, get them back to you. And then a lot of the comments you provide today will help us reshape and retell what we present to council next Tuesday anyway. So we appreciate any comments or questions you have, and we'll do our best to answer them tonight or get you answers quickly if we can.
Because you're just asking for comments. You're not looking for any kind of motion at the end of this thing, as I remember. Is that correct?
Yeah, that really, the request was, provide input to us.
Yes. So I didn't think we were making a motion per se. It was just going to be comments from the board geared towards the city council.
So some background on the sewer rates. Your sewer utility, as you all know, is a financially self-supporting enterprise. And rates are the main source of the revenue. The rate impacts of the new water reclamation facility are going to depend on the project alternative and the associated cost. And then also the financing sources. And that's the State Revolving Loan Fund and the WIFIA program. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, versus bonds. So funding, as you all know, and funding the new water reclamation facility is going to be a major financial challenge for residential and commercial customers. So we recognize that. Some history on the last rate study. The last rate study was completed in 2014, 2015, and the city had adopted 5 years of gradual increases. 2 years of increases have already been implemented. You had 3 years left. And in the previously adopted sewer rates, and we discussed this briefly with a question from a member of the public earlier, it assumed a $74 million new project with no recycling. We mentioned, too, some of the cost items that weren't included in that original estimate. There was a 25% capital and operating cost share with Cayucas as well as part of that. And then low rate state revolving loan financing. Those were the assumptions that went into that prior rate study. And additional rate increases are needed. Bartle Wells developed updated financial and rate projections, and they based it on the 2016-2017 city budget and some slightly conservative assumptions. So they assumed that the Cayucas cost sharing would end for the existing plant starting after 2018, 2019, assuming that their project's on track and on schedule as according to their latest schedules. And but most of the shared costs for wastewater treatment are fixed costs, as you all know. Staffing's a big cost, and you necessarily lose a staff member because your flows go down 20%. You still need the same number of people doing those jobs. We developed projections under a range of water reclamation facility scenarios. So we looked at the minimum and maximum project cost scenarios that Eileen presented earlier. And then we also looked at low-rate state revolving loan fund and WIFIA, which is an EPA financing device now, versus standard bond financing. And we see those as representing really the two bookends of your financing in terms of your rates and your debt service for public agency. So the range of project costs, what we call alternative zero, the no recycling option, has a cost opinion of 123.6 or 124 million. Operating costs for just secondary treatment of about 2.4 million. And the escalated project costs, by the time we've assigned escalation factors out to the midpoint of construction and then to when the operation begins, put us about that escalated cost that goes into the rate study becomes 135 million. But the present day cost is 124 million. And the escalated secondary treatment costs, those also go up in proportion, assuming an escalation rate. And then on the right column, the other end is the recommended project, and that's the advanced treatment with groundwater recharge with indirect potable reuse, with 167 million on the unescalated cost, up to 183 million with cost escalation, and secondary treatment or combined secondary and advanced treatment at 3 million, and then that gets escalated to about 3.5 million. And so the escalated costs are what go into the rate study to make sure you have enough money to account for cost escalation. So the first set of financial projections, this is based on the secondary treatment with no recycling and with state revolving loan fund and WIFIA financing. WIFIA is the Water Infrastructure Financing Improvement Act. I believe that's what the acronym stands for. But WIFIA is a relatively new financing program. The EPA is administering that loan program directly, whereas what they had traditionally done for water and sewer was the feds would provide money to State Water Resource Control Board for the state revolving loan fund programs, and then the state Water Resource Control Board would manage that funding program and administer it for agencies. So these projections show a max sewer rate of 140 a month, beginning in year 2020, 2021. The date on that coincides with the year that the plant construction is completed, because you have to start paying back the WIFIA or the SRF loans a year after construction is complete. That's when you start paying debt service. But you want to start accruing money ahead of that because you need to have a debt reserve in place. And so Alex's assumption is 2020 to 2021 is when that rate would start going up. And what's shown here is it's not a gradual increase. Basically what it shows now is you would have a large increase from, basically in 2020. And you can see the debt service is this gold bar. It becomes a large percentage of your overall sewer rate at that point. The other components of the sewer rate include, other capital improvements that's the red line that need to be done in the sewer system. Any cash funding for the water reclamation facility, it's assumed that could happen the first few years. So, and then the wastewater treatment operating costs, and the general O&M for the collection system. And so these are some of the call-outs starting in 19 and 20. There's no longer any cost sharing with Cayuga Sanitary District. So the wastewater treatment O&M cost, you see that goes up 1920 to reflect that. This is all based on just the city's contribution towards these things because it's the city sewer fund funding this work. And then you see the cash reserve requirement in the yellow bar, and then the gold bar is when the SRF debt service starts after the water reclamation facility is completed. So this is the first of four alternatives. The layout's generally the same on the others, but I wanted to spend a couple of minutes looking at this one with you to call out some of the details and some of the information. So the next graph, financial, this is projections for alternative or option A2. So this is the same project, meaning no recycling, discharge to the ocean, but bond financing. Bond rates, the assumption here was that the bond financing would be right about 5%. The SRF and WIFIA financing, it was assumed that would be about 2.5%. That makes a big difference to your debt service, going from 2.5% to 5%. And so if you bond finance the project through bonds, you'd be up at $180 a month. And then you see what a larger overall component of your sewer fee becomes debt service at that point. So scenario B is the full recommended project. So it's the injection, and it's the $167 million capital project. And under the with state revolving loan fund or WIFIA financing, your max sewer rate goes up to $180 a month. I mentioned the rate increase takes place 2021, but actually it comes to the full rate, the $180 a month in 21-22. And then the other bookend is is bond financing. I mean, obviously there's private financing and other options, but for a public agency, bond financing is going to be much more favorable as opposed to some other sorts of private financing. So if you pursued bond financing, that would be a max sewer rate could be $225 a month. And again, the point of this is just to show you the ranges, because your goal is to get the lowest cost financing you can. It's to go after the state revolving loan fund and the WIFIA financing. And we'll talk about those in a minute. So this graph, really hard to read on the screen. That was pointed out yesterday, and so we had an opportunity to make copies of the presentation today. But you can see the sewer rate breakdown for the new water reclamation facility with, or the new plant with secondary treatment, no recycling, so the alternative zero. Your current rate is $62.50 for this year. It goes up to, and this is for a single family residence, so that goes up to about $83 in 2020. And you will, but the maximum it would go up to under the new project, it goes up to $140. So it becomes about a $55 to $60 increase over what's already been passed by the city. And then with the the new wharf with the advanced treatment and recycling, so the full project, that goes to $180. So that's another $40 a month on top of the alternative zero. You get the full injection and recycling. Just to give a context, so that becomes about $95 to $100 over where your rate increase would be anyway as of the old rate increase. And that's per month. So a few things to think about with the sewer rate. The rates have to be adopted before financing can be obtained. And you have to pass a rate that will allow you to take out financing for the full amount of the project. And you have to assume you're not going to get grants, because the funding agency wants to make sure that even though you're pursuing grants like every agency does, that you've got the financial wherewithal to pay back the money they loan you, and that you've got enough financing in place to pay back all the loans, so you're not picking whose you pay back. So the city can adopt a maximum rate. So let's say if council decides to move forward with groundwater, with the IPR project, then they could set a maximum rate at 180, and they could be reevaluated in future years, because it doesn't mean you have to spend the full 180. It just means that you need to get approval through the hearing process, through Prop 218. You need to get that's your process for getting approval to raise those rates to that maximum, but you can make them lower than that. Council can make those lower. So the city is only going to increase rates as needed to meet sewer enterprise revenue requirements. So the city can't raise more money than they're going to spend. They can collect a little more with just to keep some debt reserve and also have some capital reserve, but agencies can't hoard a lot of cash. This is the civil engineer's version of the finance when I say hoard a lot of cash. So a few options and some outstanding issues. The timing of future sewer rate increases. So you can defer implementation of future rate increases until after the previously adopted rates have been fully phased in. But another, and that's really what's shown here, but another option is start phasing in the higher rates sooner. So your current rates, I think, are up in 2020. Is that right, Rob?
Yes. So they would go to the maximum rate at $83 a month for residential single family in 2020. So we have two additional rate increases to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. So, did you have a question?
Does that leave us enough time you have to fix it.
Yeah.
Does that leave us enough time to get our reserve to be able to apply for the loan?
Yes, and the rate study's set up to allow you to build that reserve. What Alex is assuming right now is that you're gonna, if you follow this scenario he's laid out, is that first year of your increase you'd be building your debt reserve. So that's his assumption. So, but there could be an advantage towards ramping up more quickly because you could build more cash, you could have less money, you could borrow less money, and that could result in lower future debt service. But a disadvantage is that it would result in higher rate increases over the next few years.
So in other words, we would throw away the existing 2 years left to rate increases and jump on the new rate increases to build cash, not borrow as much money in the future, offset future rate increases by paying early.
And potentially then us, as citizens and consumers, we're also escalating and not having that single jump that year, right? We're not having that major jump back in 2021, 2022. We're not doubling then. We're escalating.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a slower escalation. You still get to about the same number, but that's true.
There's value in the existing property that's out here now. And is there a way we can work it out so that if we sell that after the plant's going and we're off and running, then of course that would go in to reduce our liability and reduce our payments? How does that work out?
So council sets maximum rates based on the Prop 218, but Prop 218 also doesn't allow cities to collect more than they need. So the existing property, should it sell and should there be a windfall due to that sale, and it will go back into the sewer fund, that could offset existing rates. We'd probably use it to pay down debt and reduce rates.
So, if we went into this higher rate so we're just assuming that we don't have any grants or anything, or not worrying about the sale. So then we have our rates set, and then we do get grants, and you never go back on money, but would we have a chance to go back, or would you just not have any more rate increases for a while?
So, like I said, Prop 218 doesn't allow the city to collect more money than it needs to supply that fund. And now we can build capital reserves, but you can't build excessive capital reserves. I would venture to guess that before, let's say, in my world, we move forward with the rate increase to $180 a month and we're building this plant. Before we get to construction, we're going to know whether we have grants or not. It's not going to be a surprise at the end. What we need to apply for grants is a certified environmental document. So we're going to know before we probably issue a construction authorization whether we're going to have grants on the project or not.
The other thing with the SRF funding and WIFIA funding is those projects, those are reimbursables. So you only borrow what you actually spend or actually use. So that's the other thing. And so you can, what you actually borrow is not the exact number you ask for.
And then along with that, if we move into this moving toward this one water thing, and when we have our own, from this recycling, and this, we're getting our own water here and off of state water, do we know yet, I think you've probably said it, and I don't know, I can't remember all these numbers. Will it be, it's possible that our water rate would go down. Our cost of water would be less, or maybe pretty much stay the same?
I would say we're closer to staying the same than going down. I don't, this is very expensive water supply. It's not a vast reduction in cost of water. It's probably slightly more than existing cost of water. It's speculation to say what the future cost of water is, but I would venture to guess it's going to be about the same as future state water.
At this point, why don't you go ahead, Mike, finish your last few slides, and I'll poll each one individually of their questions.
Sounds good.
Oh, okay.
So another odd thing to talk about is bill recovery. So what are the ways that the city could get paid by customers? So the city currently bills customers monthly. So one option is you could look at recovering all or a portion of the sewer bills on the property tax rolls. And that's part of what's done with Los Osos project now, is there's partial recovery of some of those sewer costs on the property tax rolls, partial payment through bills. So that can change the payment responsibility from tenants to property owners. The county's on the teeter plan, which means you get, if you bill the county and the county bills property owners through the property tax, that my understanding is you get, and Alex could state this better than I could, but you got 100% payment regardless of whether the property owners are delinquent on their tax bills or not. So you get that money. The county has to go chase those delinquencies. So, in terms of the cash flow consideration, though, the tax payments to the city would only occur twice per year. So it's just something to think about from a cash flow perspective. And there could be a need to maintain a higher level of fund reserves as a result of that. And the city would also need to still go through a noticing and public hearing process similar to what you're doing with water rates to put that on the tax rolls, because it's still considered, a rate or a charge or a fee. But it could be done concurrently with this Prop 218 rate increase process, or could be done in the future. So it can run at the same time.
So the Health and Safety Code, California Health and Safety Code, allows collection of sewer rates on property taxes. There's several agencies that do it. Los Osos is one example. City of Atascadero is another, where they don't have a water billing option is typically the reason they do it, and it's just more convenient to collect that way. Another stated advantage, Alex stated this yesterday, was the write-off of property taxes on your federal income tax. You can't legally write off, I don't believe, I'm not a tax attorney, write off the user fee portion of it, but I don't know that anybody, I personally don't know of anybody that recalculates their property taxes based on what's the sewer rate versus the sewer loan payback. So that could be perceived as an advantage, that there's some deductibility of the sewer rate on income taxes.
There also are debt restructuring options. So the financial projections assume a level annual debt service, same debt service every year. WIFIA can allow debt deferment for up to 5 years. Bonds can often be structured with lower payments in the early years. But an advantage of that can allow a more gradual phase-in of rate increases. But a disadvantage is it can result in higher debt service and higher rates in the long term. And then also, one of the areas we're working with the attorney on that's kind of delayed the release of this rate study to the public in a published form right now is working through the split between what's the water rate and what's the sewer rate per some kind of late guidance or late input from the city attorney.
City attorney's opinion is that the portion that can be put on the sewer bill is only that portion that for the level to what is required for wastewater treatment, and that portion that is for water supply benefit needs to go onto the water bill. We learned that nuance last Thursday afternoon. That's what's delayed that water rate. The water and sewer rate final study. One thing that we talked about bonds on the last slide is delaying. It's basically capitalizing your interest payments. Mm-hmm. So delaying those interests, but they go back. You're financing interest payments. So first few years might be capital only. Deferring those interest payments, but you're capitalizing them, and you'll end up paying for them sometime in the future.
So some strategies for cost containment. Really, we're pursuing grants. So one that we're actively pursuing is the Water Smart grant from the Bureau of Reclamation, and it'll fund up to $20 million for a project like ours. It's a competitive process, but we've had a call now with the Bureau of Reclamation. The city's working with a consultant called Ferguson Group that does a lot of federal lobbying. They've been involved at pretty high levels with the Bureau of Reclamation with us. We also have Kestrel Consulting, a grant and financing expert. Now that we've identified a project, they can really mobilize and start moving on opportunities because they needed a good project description before they could start finding the right grants and programs for us. So we just submitted the letter of interest for the WIFIA program last Monday. And that can fund up to 49% of a project. The State Revolving Loan Fund is predicting a short-term cash flow shortage the next few years. It's a revolving loan fund, though, and as agencies who borrowed money from them pay it back, then that cash becomes available for other agencies to borrow. And they loaned out, I think, over $1 billion to Sacramento Regional Sanitation District. So we want to be able. Our project. What's happening with SRF is becoming a more competitive loan program than it would have been a few years ago. Our project has a lot of advantages for pursuing that loan program, and we're can be very favorable in a lot of ways for that project when you factor in everything that we're doing with this. So, or with that program. The WIFIA program will fund up to 49% of the project, though. So we're pursuing both WIFIA and state revolving loan funds. And then value engineering through the design and the design build process. One of the things we talked about at the last WRF meetings is, well, we need to get the costs down. And we all recognize that. The importance right now is assigning a realistic budget that's not overly conservative but has some conservatism built into it. And one of the advantages to a design build process is when the design builders come to propose on the treatment plant, you get value engineering through that proposal process, and then also as they move forward on the work. You save time, you can save money, and you also encourage these entities to compete because they have to commit to some kind of a construction cost early in that bidding process. And then the city is going to reevaluate finances each year and will only implement rates as needed. So what we've got to do is, these are the maximum rates. That's how we look at this. But the goal is do everything we can on the cost side to reduce these, but not to the point where you can't get the project finished if you start it. So we're trying to manage risk and cost control. So next steps, City Council is going to consider these draft findings from the rate study next Tuesday. And then May 2nd, we're going to have a WRF committee meeting to bring back the rate findings. Because WRF really hasn't had a chance to look at this yet. We just got the information in time for CFAC, so we scheduled CFAC and then a meeting with your board and then WRF. May 9th, City Council is going to authorize noticing for the Proposition 218 process. So notifying the public customers what the rates will be or what the maximum rates could be. And then May 12th, those notices will be mailed out. There's a 45-day waiting period, and then a public hearing scheduled for June 27th for council.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Sir.
I'm going to go ahead and start with questions from, I'll start at this end this time, Stu, if you'd like to go.
When you read the paper, what's happened on those also recently, they've had a huge jump in their rates. Los Osos has had a huge jump in their rates over there, and of course they were guaranteed, I believe, $140 a month to start with, and now it's $180 a month. What assurance do we have that once you lay all the foundation and do everything else, that what you say is true and we're not going to be chasing a huge rate increase after a year or two?
That's a good question. I know several of you have been involved with infrastructure projects before, and you all know what we know, and that's you don't know what a project's going to cost till it's finished. What I'll say is we feel confident with the estimates that have been put together so far. Black & Veatch worked through the facility master plan to put cost opinions together. We reviewed them. We provided information. Our QC team and consultants also provided input into that. We feel like there have been a lot of eyes on those cost opinions. So we feel confident in those for where we're at in the project right now. One of the reasons we build in a contingency is to account for things that we don't know yet, but we've tried to put dollars to everything we can for the cost opinion. So we've been as thorough as we can. As I think we've been thorough at this stage. But one difference between the Los Osos project and this one is I don't know that there are too many parallels to a community-wide collection system, brand new sewer collection system. And so I could imagine that for Los Osos, I mean, it's all new manholes, all new pipes, all new laterals. And I don't know a parallel of anywhere where there's no other community in California that's done it to that scale in 2010. So I think that one's a much different animal than what we've got. Our project's large. It's an expensive project for a small community. We understand that. But the fact is you're building a treatment plant on a greenfield site where there's nothing now. We know a lot about that site through the geologic studies and the work that we've been doing there. The pipeline costs and lift station costs, those are a lot easier to estimate than I think what the teams probably went through in Los Osos. But it's something we worry about.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very much so.
You've only got so much money, and a lot of the people here are retired too, and that's something we have to put a yardstick against and say, okay, what are we going to do with this, and how can we control this? Once we agree to all of this and it's go and we start building and so on, if a rate comes along that's better than what we currently have, let's say we sign up initially for a 5% and then it drops to, there's some money available and it drops to 2.5%. what happens there? Does the rate go down for everybody, or do we pay it off quicker, or what happens?
So you lock into your SRF rate when you are early in the agreement process, and then that's your rate for 30 years. You cannot use, let's say, if you wanted to go out and sell bonds to finance the project, you can't use SRF money to refinance. You can only use SRF money for new construction. So you wouldn't have an opportunity, the bonds, if you would not be able to use SRF money to refinance your bond, basically, or buy to your bonds. But if you used bond financing, then if a cheaper bond came along, you can often refinance. And that could bring your debt service down, kind of like if the way you look at a mortgage. But we're recommending that you aggressively pursue SRF and WIFIA. And you can't really refinance those, nor do you really want to. I mean, the SRF loan rate floats at about half of the state's last general obligation bond sale. And so it's running right around like 1.5 or 1.7 or something right now. The projections here are based on 2.5%. So the rate consultant tried to build in a little bit of conservative factor into those rates, because historically they've been, they can be up at, in the twos sometimes.
Okay, that's what I have.
Okay, Chris. Oh, okay. John.
Based on what I heard last night, what I heard tonight, my attitude is pay it off as you go. Do it aggressively. Put it on the tax roll if you can. I'd have some sort of option for a property owner to pay off the liability before the bond is issued, as you would in an assessment district. And there was something else. And then a couple other things. John Martin last night at the CFAC said that he'd been a manager for the Kern County Water District, and he was saying that the Teeter program, as done by Kern County, did not cover the 100% of the. They didn't go after cost recovery on special assessments like this. And then the other thing is, if we were at $240 a month for water and sewer, that's 6% of the average or the median income of this town, and which greatly exceeds what the EPA recommends as a percentage for water and sewer. And that would need to be addressed somehow.
Thank you, John. Christian?
As far as, we don't know what our financing is going to be. I don't like seeing a huge, or a jump down the road. I'd rather see it escalated beginning now for a couple reasons. One, so we have a debt reserve. It's kind of like cleaning up our credit. So we put ourselves in the most viable position as we go out for financing. We have a good debt reserve. We also have some capital on hand for delinquencies, because we don't know if it's going to go onto property taxes. We don't know who's going to finance it as of yet. So regardless of the loan structure, it also, I think, with so many people on fixed incomes, it's pretty hard that just tomorrow you're going up $100. But if you go up $20, this month, and maybe 6 months later, whatever the escalation rate is, you have a little bit more time to adjust to figure out where you're going to cut things to pay for that. So we don't know what our financing abilities are going to be. So I think if we can position ourselves, clean up our credit, in essence, a little bit be better. And I've done a few projects with Black & Veatch, so I know they're probably one of the most viable budget-wise in the country to hit the numbers as close as anybody can. I think that also, I don't know if there's any specials or any special districts in the city right now. I don't know if there's any areas that are on lift stations or anything like that. I don't know if the rates are the same throughout the whole city. But obviously, with new facilities, new locations, gravity, uphill flows, everything like that, I think the special assessment districts really need to be addressed, whether they exist now or whether they get added on in the future.
Thank you, Christian. Go ahead, Jen. Your thoughts?
My thoughts. I think you should pursue the IPR one, the alternative 3 and 4. I agree with John that $240 a month is a lot of money to ask people to pay. I also agree with Christian that it should be escalated as fast as possible to sort of, to quote him, clean up our debt. And I think we should really work on getting grants to keep and everything we can to keep the prices as low as possible. And hope we live in a rose-colored world and everything will work out really cheaply.
Okay. My thoughts are, first of all, you're talking about a sewer and water rate update. I heard nothing on water. I probably know this more than anybody else who sits on the board. I've lived it. I feel there's going to be confusion in the community based on what I saw tonight. Based on the fact, I don't know how much it's costing for the water if you're going to use alternative 3 and 4. If it makes more sense to buy from the state, why would you not buy from the state? I mean, this is people's money in their pocket. One of the options I did not see in this is trying to start with a rate that you can reasonably charge the customer and then back into what community goals could be met, and maybe city council has to have a reality check that they may not be able to do all those community goals that they thought of in the first place. I mean, they're noble goals, but if people can't afford it, this is going to go nowhere fast. It really is. So what I'd suggest when you go before the city council, first of all, try to quantify where your water rates are truly going, because I don't know if anybody else on the board saw it. I'm not sure what the water rate is in the future. I see the adopted, but I don't see what it would be with the alternative 0 and alternative 3 and 4. I'd try to quantify that so at least city council has a little bit more information to work on. And I'm not chiding staff. I'm really not. It's just, like I say, I live this, so I should know about it more than anybody else, and I'm confused, and I'm not easily confused. So that's the part I would suggest to staff. And as far as the city council goes, my thoughts would be the fact that they may have to re-look at their community goals, because I'm not sure $240 or $250, and some of this was 180 and jumps up to 240, but I almost have to take the worst case condition, because like you just brought up, in order to get the financing, you got to prove you can fund the debt. And, until that happens, I feel it's a little premature to jump the water rates or water and sewer rate to revise it at this point, unless you're looking to get the financing set up right now, because you'll have a better chance of knowing what this thing's going to cost once you put it out for the design build portion and you start getting the proposals back that say how much it's going to cost to physically build the facility. And my question to staff is, do you have the opportunity to wait that long in order, does the financing have to come into play, Mike, prior to going through the design build portion of it? I mean, getting the proposals.
Those are really good questions. So I want to go back to the question on the water versus the sewer rate.
Right.
So originally, when Bartlewell started their work, the assumption was all the impact would be on the sewer rate.
Oh.
So that's why it's been presented this way.
Oh, but the way you worded it, says water and sewer update.
Right, and the reason it's worded that way is because what we've got to do is figure out, okay, of that $97 rate increase, what which of that needs to go onto the water rate and which of it stays in the sewer rate.
Right.
So we'll clarify that before Tuesday. We've got we're working with the city attorney on that. Should have an answer on it today or tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah, because I look at this table 3 and 4 in the actual staff report, and I see $83.67 and 97. You're well into the 200s.
Yeah.
With water and sewer, and
combined you are.
I think
That's
it was
right.
John brought up the fact that the median income in this town, that's a killer hit. I know when I started on this board, the rates were around $60 for water and sewer here in this town. So we're talking almost a fourfold in a period of about 6-7 years or something on that order.
Sure.
So I think City Council needs to rethink some of the priorities too. And that's my thoughts.
Okay. And a couple things. Is it in terms of increasing the water and sewer rate now? So SRF financing, and we're assuming WIFIA will be the same way because this is the first time the EPA's offered this. It's a new financing program. Mm-hmm. But with SRF, it's about a 10-month review period between when you get everything submitted to State Water Resource Control Board and when they've worked through the loan application or when you get your loan agreement. Mm-hmm. So you can't do that until you're done with the CEQA process. Mm-hmm. So if we're certifying the EIR late November, early December, then you can't get an answer back on your funding for 9 months. No. So that's the reason we need to start this now, is because when the EIR is certified, is we need to know what's going to happen on the financing. So that because we've got to submit a financial plan to State Water Resource Control Board to apply for the money. So that's the reason the timing is where it is in the process compared to it's related to the EIR.
So when do you truly feel you have to have a rate approved and in place in order to meet your goals?
Before you apply for your finance?
I mean, is it June of 2017?
Oh,
is it December of...
This scenario here, we wouldn't have to have the rate to collect until basically completed construction if we jump them up.
Okay. So it doesn't require you for the financing to cover the cost of construction.
We have to have rates we have to have a rate structure approved prior to...
that's what I'm trying to find out. When do you need to have the rate structure approved?
Prior to applying.
But you don't have to implement it.
Right. That's prior to applying.
That's right.
Yeah. And I would venture to guess if we put a proposal on the streets for design builders to propose on a project that we couldn't finance, we would get very limited proposals on it, because putting a design build proposal together for this size project is probably a $300,000 work effort.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to risk that for a project that they don't see as viable.
And to me, it's, this community wants to see the water reused or recycled. And I got a feeling when you get to City Council next week, you might run into a buzzsaw, just because that's when the people show up. Tonight it's an empty house, but I think you may be seeing that. So that's why I was talking about try to get your numbers in order, especially with where the water side of it's going, because people just don't look at the sewer. They look at their sewer and water, comes in one bill, and it's the kind of thing, they got to see the whole picture. And I didn't feel like this gave me the whole picture. So that's my thought.
Those are good comments too. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'd like to add one other thing, that if you're going through a WIFIA application, that environmental approval will be through NEPA, not through CEQA.
That's correct. And so the CEQA, and even for SRF funding, there's you go through the CEQA process, and then you go through an enhanced biological and cultural that are NEPA. So we're already doing part of that for SRF.
You also have to do the null project too for NEPA.
Yep.
Right. And EPA will be the lead agency on that. They'll be the one preparing it, although we'll pay for it. That's the other aspect of some of these funding, the Bureau of Reclamation and the EPA funding program. We pay for their review of those processes.
There's usually a process where you can actually start picking some of the consultants too yourself rather than, you're going to pay them to pay the consultant you pick, or you're going to pay the consultant you pick. But and then I don't know what the markup EPA does on their capacity.
As a last thought on this, I wanted to cover what Rick Deschler brought up earlier, and that was to recommend to council that the land sold from the existing plant be used towards the sewer, which I think Rob already brought up the fact, generally speaking, that's where those funds would probably flow to since it was part of it. But I just wanted to throw that in there. Does anybody else have any other final comments before?
My comment is, of course, we've got the land out there, and God praise if we can get everything going and so on. What else could we put out there to help lower our cost? Could we move part of the city out there? Or could we move the whole construction department or the whole city maintenance department out there? Can we do other things to lower our cost and move them in one location, freeing up the current location so that we can market it?
It's been addressed if you look at the roof CAC, Stu, and there's a lot of back and forth, especially with the property owner and the MOUs. And so I'm not sure how Rob's...
I can answer it fairly quickly.
Okay, good.
Well, regardless if we move our courtyard out there or not, we're going to have to find a new spot for the courtyard. If you've looked at it, it's going to fall down. It was built in on the coast a long time ago, and those metal buildings just don't hold up out there. So it's about a 27-acre piece of property. I would think having the site free from municipal operations would garner a better price than having a courtyard kind of in the middle of it. But that'll work its way through a separate process through our planning commission and probably through this board also. But it's not tied to this project, although it could ultimately help fund it.
Okay. On this item, it's just asking for review, consider, and provide comments. Hopefully we gave you comments that you could bring forward to the City Council. Rob, on item C, were you wishing to discuss any of the potential future agenda items?
No, and I think the one that we're bringing forward next time is the Adopt a Park, Adopt a Street, Memorial Bench program that has kind of been lingering out there for quite some time. So we can look forward to that one.
Okay. And with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. And the next meeting will be May 17th at 5:30 p.m. right here at the Veterans Memorial Building. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, ladies.